right. Well, good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you may be. My name is Rich Bowers. I'm the Associate Vice President for our Cognition Jump program. And today I wanted to get down and sit down with one of my good friends, Raymond McIntyre, who currently is our Manager of Learning and Development and comes with an illustrious background working at companies such as PwC, E&Y, and Sony, where he helped build and facilitate learning and development content. So
Mhm.
good morning for us, Ray. How you doing today?
I'm doing well, sir. And greetings and salutations to you, sir. How are things by you? How are things?
Good. Hey, I can never complain when I get to spend some time with you. So, but
Rich, I always say if you ever want to give up your life here at Calabria, I think, Senator Bowers, I think that's the way to go, sir. Senator Bowers, I think it has a good ring to it.
you know what? I appreciate it. And check out the segment, right? The segue. We are going to be talking about professional habits that might help us get to the Senate or at least be a high performing individual on our day
There
to
you
day
go.
roles. How's that sound?
Nice segue, sir. Very nice segue. I love it.
Thank you. So the reason why I wanted to get a chance to chat with you, Ray, is I know from speaking with others and obviously working with you for nearly 10 years that people really admire and certainly speak highly about your ability to be professional, your ability with following up and just the thoroughness that goes into everything. And
Mhm.
so when we were talking about, hey, how can we kind of steal some of your ideas that you do, that have been again so admired by others in a professional setting, and and you shared with me when we were just kind of casually chatting, it really started out with creating professional habits, right? So can you explain to me a little bit by what you mean by professional habit?
Sure.
Yeah, of
And thank you once again, Rich, for inviting me to this. I really appreciate it.
course.
Um, Yeah, so professional habits. So, a habit is something that you do, obviously day in, day out, and it's just kind of becomes kind of your DNA. Like for me, one of my personal habits, and I'm saying this just to bust your chops a little bit, Mr. Bowers. Like I'm an avid runner. I like to run.
Yes.
So it's one of my things, right? I love to do it, stay in shape. But you're to kind of sharpen the focus a little bit more on professional habits. It's I think it's a combination of the little things, like for instance, uh, being punctual to meetings, uh, double checking your the spelling and the punctuation and sentence structure of your emails that are being sent out to stakeholders or to your teams or things like that. Just kind of having those habits that just help you to grow as a professional. This that overall discipline.
Right. No, and those are critical, and I'm glad you brought up those two, and those are really good kind of entry points to our discussion because being punctual to meetings and making sure that you're reviewing your emails before you send them or your sentences make sense. They're all a reflection of you, right? Wouldn't you say? And so that's something that you would want to present in a great light, correct?
Yes, absolutely. I think it kind of helps to reinforce, kind of it. Um, I know you and I have had these conversations about one's personal brand.
Mhm.
Kind of like your so when people it's like establishing a habit, something that you do regularly, like always showing up on time, as I said earlier, or just establishing these good habits. And that, when others start to understand that, appreciate that, and they recognize that as part of your brand, it's part of who you are as a professional.
And first thing I think of is when you mention showing up early even to meetings is Michael Jordan. Obviously, in my humble opinion, the greatest basketball player ever. The thing about him is he was always first one in, last one out,
Yes.
and just so dedicated to his craft that that was his brand, right? He got into these habits of, hey, look, I'm going to be the first one in the door, come in early, and get my ducks in order, make sure that I'm building out the practice that I need to be the best. And so that kind of translates or transitions either way over to what we're chatting about today. So one of the when you're building these habits, punctuality is something super controllable, and same thing, maybe reviewing emails before you send them, and get in the habit of doing that. Or one of my favorites is not putting the sender's email in, on the top of the email until I write everything out and proofread it and then adding them in. A little habit of my own. But how about something even bigger? When you're looking at professional habits, something that we've seen a lot is reacting to criticism or critiques or constructive criticism. How do you feel about that?
Yeah, that's an excellent point. Look, honestly, just between me, you, and the rest of the universe, right? I mean, I personally, I have to be in that mindset of, if I'm going to receive constructive feedback, not to think of it as a criticism per se.
Mm-hmm.
And it takes a little, more of a mindset. And I'm speaking strictly from my own personal experience.
Yeah.
I do have a tendency to take things personally because I put a lot of effort into the things. I know I'm a staunch believer in making sure that everything I do, all of my work products are a representation of me as a
Mm-hmm.
person, as a human being, as a business professional, as a learning and development professional. So I really put a lot of time and energy to make sure that all those things are buttoned up accordingly. It's kind of that attention to detail. But when we talk about constructive feedback, or when people are giving us some form of criticism, yeah, it can be a little tough, no doubt about it. It's taken me a while to kind of understand that criticism is a good thing.
Mm-hmm.
I know it sounds a little funny, right?
Yeah,
Criticism is
seriously.
a good thing, but it can be. It can be because it really is an opportunity to just kind of consider the information that's being presented to you and to think about it in the context of what's being spoken about. So, Rich, you're giving me feedback, constructive feedback, criticism, if you wish,
Mm-hmm.
on a particular project. Here's my opportunity to consider, what were the areas of my weakness? And
Yeah.
you're, in a manner of speaking, as crazy as this may sound, you're
Mm-hmm.
actually doing me a favor, because now here's my opportunity to identify a weakness and then to work on that so it can become a strength. Does that sound crazy?
You
Maybe
know,
that sounds a little crazy.
on paper, yeah, and I think that's how people don't actually think that way. At first is, when you're getting constructive feedback, and you and I both manage a lot of folks and also have been managed. So I'll even talk from my point of view. When I get constructive feedback, I'll be honest, I'm like, I'm a little nervous, or maybe even a little mad at first. And so what you're saying in the initial thought process was, hey, look, I tried my best and it's still not good enough, is kind of a thought that a lot of people have. But
Mhm.
when you go about it your way, it's, hey, look, next time when you're putting all this effort in, if you make these little adjustments, it'll be even better. Right. And it's ways to improve yourself. And so when you get these type of feedbacks or feedback sent your way, it really is somebody taking their time out to make observations and try to pass along suggestions for you to be even better next time, for you to be more efficient next time. And it does take sometimes, even getting a lot of feedback in my career or giving it, I understand if it takes a quick second for you to kind of make that switch of, oh, I
Mm.
mean, I feel like, someone's coming at me to wait, I see the reason, I see the logic and the value there, right?
Yeah, yeah,
So
I totally agree.
yeah, and I'm right there with you. So everything you said is the right way to look at it. Especially from a manager. A manager, I've had managers where I don't get any feedback. And in that type of situation, I'm almost like I can't be doing everything right. Right. There has to be areas for me to improve. And I'm almost yearning for that type of feedback.
Yes.
So then when a manager does come, sits down, spends time with you, gives you some details on how to be better, little improvements. And then the next time you go about it, or say I go about it, and I cut my time in half, the
Mhm.
direction I wanted to go is more exact. Overall, all of a sudden I'm like, thank you. Thank you. I was able to get that feedback to be better. And I think that's a mentality that is not necessarily learned, but is not necessarily natural, but can be learned through good habits, as you mentioned.
Yeah, I agree. In fact, I was just thinking that I'm a little older than you, Rich. A lot
Mhm.
older. Okay, a lot.
No, not
And I have
much.
all the gray hair. I have a lot of gray hairs to prove that. But it's funny because when I started as a professional, feedback was once a year. And that's when you'd meet with the manager and he or she or they would just, it was like a bulldozer of feedback. It was like, whoa, some
Yeah,
good,
a
some not so
wave.
good. So it's a lot. It's a lot to process. But,
Mhm.
I agree with you. I think it's important for employee manager, the manager subordinate, whatever, however you want to phrase it, that they have those touch points. And that way, something, if there is a particular area that needs some work, you can make small course corrections, right?
Yeah.
Um, and that way, to your point, what you were saying earlier, I totally agree with this. You make those small course corrections. So the next time the same opportunity presents itself, you're that much more effective or productive. And you're right. I don't,
Yeah.
it's a little counterintuitive, quite
Hmm.
honestly. But, I mean, speaking about it, you and I in this logical sense, yeah. But at the human level, it takes a little thought. I agree. I agree with you. Yeah.
And we might spend most of our time here on this topic because you also brought up another great point is kind of the old school of managing. Now I realize most of the folks who are going to be listening to this may not be in a management capacity right now, but maybe in the future and probably will be. Where when you're back in the day when managers used to give that yearly review only, and that was kind of the only time, it's overwhelming and it can feel like an attack, even if it's all good feedback. It's kind of like, wow, this is a lot at once, and it's a lot to handle for anybody. Kind of that, I guess, waterfall type of mentality. But
Yes.
but I think that the newer stage of managing, or the way it should be, is that constant communication throughout is, hey, look, you see something, you mention, hey, what have you done? And, how can we improve next time without being overbearing? I don't, you don't have to be a helicopter over your individuals, your teams. But I think that is it. It's kind of like you can get these micro improvements week over week instead of expecting a completely different person, after 1 year and given a 30-minute review.
Yeah.
Right.
I
So
like micro improvements. That's a good one, Rich. I like that. That's
you,
good.
you
Yeah.
can keep that, put that in the L&D trainings. So
I'm going to take credit for it. You realize that, right?
yeah, no, that's okay. That's fine. It's all yours. It's not like this is recorded or anything. So
Exactly.
so so I guess, if you don't mind, I don't mind spending more time on this, because obviously in the role that you have done and what you've been in throughout your career, this is a really critical area. And so, what are just outwardly, what are some of the responses that you've seen from people that you've either interacted with or heard feedback on when they receive feedback? What is the natural reaction that you've seen from others?
Yeah. That's a great question. You know, anytime I have to present any type of, and you can't see me doing this because I'm doing air quotes here, but anytime people are, you're about to, present some type of constructive feedback. And I keep using that word because I don't want to say criticism because it
Yeah.
has a negative connotation to it. But, I personally, I try to put myself in their position. You said this earlier. The one's anxiety level probably skyrockets at these types of things. I know mine certainly did, and to a lesser extent, a little bit more, still today, but
Yeah.
not as much.
Mhm.
But I think it's important to be able to, just go into these types of settings. So whether you're on the receiver side of the fence, or the person presenting the information, I think it's just important just to have an open mind, right? Think of it
Yes.
in the context of, here's an opportunity for me to see where my strengths are and where some of my weaknesses are. And in most cases, there's more strengths than weaknesses. And this is, like I said, just an opportunity to just be that much better. Um, so I think having an open mind, going in there, just being an active listener, which
Mhm.
means, not thinking about defending yourself or coming up with questions as the information is being presented to you, but just really hearing the words, hearing what's being said to you and carefully considering them. Does that sound too old-fashioned? That might sound a little too old-fashioned by today's standards.
No, I'll tell you, man, there's a lot of jewels in everything that you just said. And it's so valuable to say, hey, let me sit back, kind of let my guard down, maybe put my ego down at times as well, because this person is sharing with me ways that they think are helpful. And that's so hard to do. And it's something almost, again, you have to take that moment to kind of think about putting yourself in that mindset. But overall, I mean, I think what you shared right there is the perfect blueprint. So I have a little bit of a curveball for you.
Okay.
Right, on that. Now, when we're receiving feedback, and by the way, also one more thing before I forget is that you mentioned you get a little, nervous or anxiety about it even today. That doesn't change. I'm right there with you. When I go in for any type of meetings with my boss, who is potentially, the nicest guy possible, and yours is too. Even with guys like gentlemen like that or bosses like that, you still get nervous. So totally understandable. Now, not everybody has the luxury of the type of managers that you and I have. And sometimes they're new managers, or sometimes they're maybe a little bit more direct. For our junior level folks or people who have maybe even junior level managers, how can they overcome potentially really kind of a rumbling, stumbling, fumbling type of approach from a manager who may not be as articulate, but is still trying to give some feedback? How would you handle that from their perspective? Any idea?
Yeah, that's a good question. That's really good. And it's a challenge. When you're, I can speak for myself, obviously. I mean, I'm a seasoned professional. I've been doing this for a really long time. And, one of the things I've learned is, you just have to have a sense of empathy for the people that are on your team. And that doesn't mean that you be a sad sack. I'm not saying anything like that. Of course not. I'm saying put yourself in the shoes of your teammates. Everybody has a life outside of the job.
And just to confirm, you're also saying both ways, right? So upwards absolutely. From your manager, peers, and potentially downwards as well to any resources.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Mm-hmm. Really just have be in touch with your humanity is, I guess, what I'm really trying to say. And, it's just so important to have a good, healthy balance. And, I think those are important things, especially if I see a young manager or not as seasoned professional who's taking on a management role, maybe if that individual was a little bit more aggressive in his or her communication, providing feedback to teammates, I would recommend, just slow your roll a little bit, take in all the details. Do people still use that expression, Rich? I'm not sure.
I'm getting out of that too. I mean, my team got me a Gen Z dictionary book, so for Christmas.
Oh no, no! Don't say that, Mr. Bowers. Don't let it be. No.
So yeah. I mean, from a manager's perspective, yes. Certainly slow your roll, or kind of take it. Take a back seat a little bit too. And yeah, I mean, hopefully they'll develop over time. Now, if you're a teammate and that's your manager who may be a little unsteady or not the best at providing feedback, the empathy piece that you mentioned is huge, right? Or realize that, hey, look, maybe this person is trying, right? They're really putting that effort in. They're learning as well on how to provide feedback. And by the way, certain managers, they also provide feedback in different ways to each individual because not everybody receives feedback the same way. So your manager, may be good at providing feedback with the teammate that sits next to you and maybe a little shaky with you as they're trying to make an effort on their end to adjust to provide feedback that is most beneficial to you. And it may not be the same avenue or venue that it would be for your teammate working on the same project. Mm-hmm. And what I've learned from my team is sometimes they'll share and say, hey, look, I respond really well this way. Mm-hmm. Or, if you kind of pass, if there's a feedback that you can provide to me, I appreciate you saying it to me. This is kind of how I learn. And and myself as a manager, I've really appreciated that because, you know, instead of me having to read minds, I get to really know exactly what you're thinking. And so I would recommend then, and you can always let your manager know, you know, hey, thank you for this feedback. I'm gonna write it down. I really respond well to this, that, and the other way, respectively. You just have to make sure that your tone is there too. And that would help them. Again, if you're running into any manager, but especially one that may be having trouble communicating, um, you know, constructive feedback your way. You think that sounds appropriate, right?
Yeah, I totally agree. I think the key takeaway from that is, you know, you have to take ownership, right?
Mm.
And you said it beautifully. You know, managers are not mind readers. You know, share share the information. You know, if I'm in a management role, well, I am in a management role, and if my team members don't share with me the way they prefer to be communicated with, I mean, you have to take ownership over that. You know, share those details. You know, this is a relationship. It's a two-way relationship, and we're
Mhm.
here to help each other out. So I totally agree with you, Rich. I think it really comes down to be open-minded, and take ownership over how you want to give feedback, how you want to receive feedback. I think those are important elements. Absolutely.
Excellent. Awesome. And I know I don't want to keep it too much longer as I know you're in demand. As our focus here, you know, turned into kind of, you know, how to, you know, work with constructive criticism from both ends, you know, but where we started was this habit building and the mentality that you should have going into receiving feedback and obviously following up with it. And it is a habit building, right? Because we're, as Ray mentioned, we're not naturally maybe responsive positively to feedback, right? We kind of get our guard up. So it is a habit of learning how to improve your you know, ability to receive feedback and take it in a positive light. So when you're building out this habit, because again, this may not happen, you know, overnight. I have a teammate of mine that I could see in her eyes when she gets feedback, that, you know, it's taken her a second to adjust, and I totally understand. But it's a habit I've seen there are improvements over the handful of years.
Mhm.
So where do you think when you're building out these professional habits, what is a mistake or two that you've seen, or maybe you even encountered that maybe push that habit, that positive professional habit from, you know, growing or maybe even stagnated it instantly?
That's wow. You're hitting these out of the park there, sir. Great
Focus.
questions, Mr. Bowers.
Thanks.
Obviously, you are well prepared, sir. Well prepared.
That's what I'm here for.
Um, yeah,
Thanks.
no, I've come to expect these things. See, that's part of your professional brand, Mr. Bowers.
I love it.
Um,
Thank you.
yeah, no, it's true. But you, to sidetrack for a second, Mr. Bowers always comes ready to play, always, and that's part of your professional brand, Rich. That's always your professional brand.
Hey,
Um,
working with you, I learned it. It really is what we're talking about today is these habit building. You know, when you go into any meeting, have notes, you know, and, you know, look into certain things. So, and I got to sit next to you in one very small office for many years and got to see it. So
yes,
thank you. Yeah. But
yeah, you earned your points in purgatory. But to answer your question, I think one of the things that could, you know, kind of disrupt this, you know, forming good habits is, I mean, this may sound a little silly, but just don't give up too quickly,
mm,
right? I mean,
mhm,
don't give up. Life has twists and turns and ups and downs and all that fun stuff, right?
yeah.
And you know, life is not always, you know, by the book. I wish it were.
Hmm.
Um, you know, what's that expression? You know, man makes plans and God laughs, or something to that effect. But the
Even
point of that is,
plans of mice and men, right, is another one
yes,
too, right? Hmm.
there's
Yeah.
another one. Thank you,
Yeah.
sir. Great reference. But you know, don't give up too soon, right? Stick to it. Be committed. Take ownership, right? Have that, and I know this really isn't a word. Maybe it is. This stick to itiveness to this philosophy. Develop a good philosophy of enhancing your professional brand. Be committed to it. Don't give up because there are going to be twists and turns and there's going to be roadblocks. So commit yourself to putting your shoulder to the grindstone. I know it's an old reference. I
That's okay.
apologize for that.
Yeah.
But
Rolling up your
putting your
sleeves,
shoulder,
right?
roll it. Thank you. Perfect. Roll up your sleeves and commit.
You know what? And that's really a good way to kind of get towards the wrap up of this too, is a lot of times the reason why professional habits aren't continuing is just because giving up happens, because it is not easy. It isn't easy to create these habits that may not come naturally.
Yes.
That may require additional, side learning. Because again, it may not just be how to handle, feedback. It may be other habits that you're looking to build, and stick with it. And what's great is get a mentor, get a peer to give you that feedback that says, hey, look, this is really important. Keep driving it. And yes, right, as you said, nose to the grindstone, or whatever it may be. Sometimes it's not going to be easy. Sometimes you're going to make mistakes and slip up. That doesn't mean to kind of wave the white flag and give up. It means, okay, I'm going to learn from this, and I'm seeing what happens when I don't follow it, right? Maybe not the best, or a slip up. And so it proves even more that the value of this habit that you're building is worth it, So overall, I mean, I think, Ray, you summed it up beautifully. And so with that being said, I mean, again, I don't want to keep you too late, and we'll have to come back again. I know there was a few other points that you wanted to discuss, but I think this was a wonderful session, and I really, really do appreciate your expertise in this area.
It was my, and it pains me to say this, Mr. Bowers, but it was my great pleasure, sir. And it's all kidding aside, it's always, I'm always happy to help. I hope the topics we talked about today were helpful, and I'm always here to help. Please.
I thank you so much, and I got to get you to do some training with my team next. We'll do a little bit live in person in headquarters. So,
perfect. I love it.
Oh yeah. All right, cool, my friend. Well, I'll let you get back to it, but again, thanks for your time. I truly appreciate it, and I know this will help a ton of folks.
Thanks, Rich. I appreciate it. Thank you, sir.
See ya. Bye.